I would like to share a couple of things that I do in my studio, and they help me save a lot of time and frustration. One of them is how I organize the repetitive quilt squares that you're going to be doing a lot of seaming when you are doing piecing. And one of them is how I like to put together at my cutting table. I assemble and cut and put together all of my different pieces. So say these are my blocks that I'm getting ready to assemble, and I take them out and I want block 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And I want this square with this square, and I will line them up. And this works with triangles, squares, scrap piecing, everything. This is now the place where I want my seam to go, is always in this one little spot right here. And I will line it up on my big long ruler. And I know that that seam is right at the top. Then I can take these, and here again is the seam that I like to, that I'm going to be sewing. And I put it right behind the next one. And on I go. And I just stack them, all the seams facing up, so that I know that all of the seams going this way, not this way, but this way, are the seams that I'm going to be sewing when I get to my sewing machine. And I can put a lot of pieces going down this long ruler. Now, the reason I use the ruler is because when I'm at my cutting table, which is separate and quite a ways from my sewing machine, I can then pick it up, and it's very stable, and I can just gently hold them, and I can have a whole rack of them, and then I go to my sewing machine, and I can just start sewing, picking up from the bottom, and sew, sew, sew. So I want to show you the second little hint that I've got, and that helps to really organize things and make it easy. Let's see here, for when I begin sewing. So I've got my pieces all set up. Now I come to my sewing machine, and one of the things that frustrates me to no end is when I put my piece in and I get to going, I get it all aligned just the way I want it, I get my feed dogs down, and I start to sew, and the thread comes out. And I have to stop and I have to rethread. And the other thing that I don't like is when I start, if I'm in a hurry and I want to get through these pieces really fast, I will start, and when I begin the sewing machine, it'll make that ugly little knot that's on the back of that piece. Those two things just drive me nuts. They seem to slow me down, and they're kind of a pet peeve. Well, when I was showed this a long time ago, I thought, why didn't I think of that? And this is what I call a thread saver. And it is simply a piece of fabric that's just like a 2-inch square, and I fold it in half so that it is 2 layers, because generally as I'm making a seam, there's 2 layers of fabric. So I like to fold it over, and I have it about that wide, which is the width of my presser foot. And this is where I put in my little thread saver. Now if you're not hanging on to these threads, that thread likes to come out and come unthreaded, which is what I do not like to have happen. So I'll put my needle down, put down my feed dogs, and hang on to that thread, and my machine will start sewing. Now I just come to the end of it. I don't really sew off of that piece, off of my thread saver, and I'll clip my little threads, because I don't like having a billion threads that collect from all of the seams that you're going to be doing on my floor, or everything to get caught up in my vacuum. So now I will take my first piece from my stack here that I've got, and I know this is where I want my piece to be sewn, and I'll just realign it if it needs it, put it in, and my machine, because it is all threaded up, it will just start sewing. And there we go. There's a little chatter there. And you can just pick up your next piece, bring it right to the end of your piece, bring it to your next piece, and on and so forth. Now if you're working with a lot of different blocks and you have, say, 20 pieces in each block, I will take a little thread saver, which is of course a different fabric than my usual, or I sometimes turn it inside out so that it's, you know, I can tell, and it's like a marker. I will put it in here and just sew through that, and now I have separated my block from block, so that I know when I go to my ironing board and I start cutting these pieces apart that I have block per block per block and don't get my blocks mixed up. So that is a thread saver. And at the end of each of my strips that I'm going to be making, I always put in a thread saver and just stop right just a couple of stitches before the end of that thread saver, and it's very easy to just clip your first piece. And now you have a nice long piece that you can take to your ironing board, cut these pieces apart, and begin your ironing and your next set of pieces that will need to be sewn together. And you can just clip them apart, do your ironing, reassemble, and let's say we take these apart, put them together. You have them pressed, of course, and then again you can lay them out onto your ruler and start stacking up again. And I hope this really helps you, because it has totally taken away a lot of the frustration with all of the threads and time saver for me.